9 years ago, my brother took everything I had built and called it his own. Last spring, his company called mine about a merger. I was on the 14th floor in a conference room that still smells like new carpet. My assistant knocked and handed me a printed meeting request. She said she thought I would want to see this one myself. The center field had a company name I have been watching for 9 years. Subject line said Partnership Opportunity Exploratory Conversation. I stared at that name for a long time. Caleb, my brother, the man who sat across from me at our kitchen table when I was 24 and told me my idea was not ready, then took it and built it 6 months later. I accepted the meeting. I did not respond to him directly. I closed my laptop and walked to the window and looked at the city. Then I called my COO into the room. I told her to pull everything we have on his company. Financials, growth curve, current investor position, everything. I said I want it before the meeting. She said all of it. I said all of it. I am 24 years old, and I share a 2-bedroom apartment with my brother Caleb. I work 2 jobs during the day, and I develop my software concept at night. A routing optimization tool for independent freight carriers. I identified the gap during a summer job at a mid-sized shipping company, watching dispatchers waste hours trying to figure out which truck went where. I have been working on this for 18 months. A working prototype, a short pitch deck, and one warm introduction to a seed investor. A former colleague from that shipping company vouched for me. His name is Marcus, and he told the investor I was worth a meeting. Caleb is 3 years older, and he just got laid off from a marketing job. He has been home a lot, lately sitting on the couch scrolling through LinkedIn. One night, he asked me what I am working on. I tell him. He asks to see the deck. I hesitate for a second, but he is my brother, and he is curious, and I am proud of what I built. I pull up the deck on my laptop, and I walk him through it. He asks good questions, not the kind of questions someone asks to be polite. The kind that means he actually understands what he is looking at. He asks about the algorithm and the pricing model and the customer acquisition strategy. He asks about the investor I am meeting next month. I answer everything. I am pleased. I am 24, and my older brother is taking me seriously for maybe the first time. I do not think about why he is asking so many questions. I should have thought about it. 6 weeks pass. I put on my only blazer, and I take the train to the investor meeting. I have practiced my pitch 47 times. I know because I counted. I walk into the lobby, and the woman at the front desk tells me the meeting has been canceled. I ask what she means. She says the firm is already committed to a similar concept from another founder. She says they signed the term sheet last week. I ask who the founder is. She looks at her screen and says Caleb Osei. I stand in that lobby for what feels like a full minute. Caleb, my brother, the man who sat on my couch and asked me good questions about my algorithm and my pricing model and my investor. The man who watched me practice my pitch without telling me he was taking notes. I take the train home. I do not call him. I do not text him. I walk into our apartment, and his room is empty. His clothes are gone. He moved out while I was on the train. I sit on the floor in the living room, and I still do not know yet whether what happened is what it looks like. But I'm already starting to believe it is. I called Caleb the same afternoon I found out about the investor meeting. I sat on the floor of our apartment where his room was already empty. He answered on the 3rd ring, and he sounded like nothing had happened. I asked him directly if he pitched a routing optimization concept to Meridian Seed Partners. He said yes. I asked him where the concept came from. There was a pause, not a short one. He said he developed the idea independently. He said, yes, we had talked about something similar, but he said his version was different, more focused on a different segment of the market. He said he had been thinking about it for a while before I showed him my deck. He said he did not take my idea. He said the space is big enough for both of us. I sat there listening to my brother tell me that the thing he saw on my laptop was already in his head. I asked him to send me his original concept documents. Anything predating our conversation 6 weeks ago. He said he would. I waited a week. Nothing. I texted him and asked again. He said he was busy with the launch and he would get to it. I waited another week. Nothing. I called him a third time, and he did not answer. I left a voicemail, and he did not call back. I stopped asking after that. I sat at my kitchen table, and I opened my laptop. I started documenting everything. Every version of my prototype with date stamps. Every file I had saved going back 18 months. Every email to my former colleague Marcus about the investor introduction. Every text message I had sent Caleb about the project. I built a timeline because I knew that was the only thing I could build. I did not have a lawyer. I did not have an investor. I did not have a brother anymore. Caleb called me one more time after that. He said he hoped I understood this was business, not personal. He said it the way someone says something they have rehearsed. I said I do understand. I meant something different by it than he did. He hung up, and that was the last time we spoke without lawyers in the room for 14 months. He was funded, launched, and moving. His company had a website and a logo and a term sheet. I had a folder full of date stamps and a 2-bedroom apartment I could no longer afford alone. I sat at my kitchen table at 24 years old, and I asked myself what I actually do now. Because he was gone, and the idea was still mine. But he had gotten there first with someone else's money, and I had nothing except the work I had already done. I did not know if that was enough, but I decided I was going to find out. I found an IP attorney through a friend of a friend. Small office on the 3rd floor of a building with a broken elevator. She looked at my timeline and my prototype and my date stamps. Then she told me something I did not want to hear. She said without a patent filing or formal trade secret protection, proving idea theft in software is exceptionally difficult. She said concepts are not protectable, only specific implementations. I had a prototype, but no filing. She told me my best move was to build faster and better than he does, not to litigate. I asked her what happens if I cannot build faster than someone with funding. She said, then you build smarter. I took her card and I walked back to my apartment. I called my former colleague Marcus, the one who gave me the original investor introduction. I explained what happened, and he was quiet for a long time. He said he had heard about Caleb's company through the grapevine. He said he did not know it came from you. I told him it did. He said he would make one more introduction for me. Smaller fund, slower money, but real. I spent 2 weeks preparing a new pitch deck. I rebuilt the prototype from scratch. Not a copy of what I showed Caleb. Something clearly distinct, something that could never be claimed as overlap. I changed the interface and the algorithm structure and the customer onboarding flow. I made it mine in a way no one could take credit for. The new investor passed after 2 meetings. He said the concept was interesting, but the market was getting crowded. He said he was seeing similar ideas from multiple founders now. He did not say Caleb's name. He did not have to. I took a 3rd job. Coffee shop in the mornings before my regular shift at the logistics company. I cut my expenses to the absolute minimum. No delivery food, no streaming services, no new clothes. I filed a provisional patent on my core algorithm. $700 I did not really have, but I found it anyway. I did not tell my family what I was doing. My mother called once a week and asked how work was. I said fine. She asked if I had talked to Caleb. I said not really. She said she wished we were closer. I said me too. I attended one family dinner that year at Christmas. Caleb sat across from me. He had a new watch and a new suit and a new way of holding himself. He asked how my job was going. I said fine. He said he was glad I was doing okay. We ate my mother's ham, and we talked about the weather, and we did not mention any of it. 3 hours. I sat across from my brother for 3 hours, and neither of us said the one thing that was actually in the room. I went home that night and opened my laptop. I worked until 2 in the morning on a product he had already launched. I did not know how long I could sustain this before something gave. But I knew I was not going to be the one who gave first. Year 3 arrived quietly, the way most things do when you are too tired to notice. I landed my first paying customer through a logistics forum I had been lurking in for months. A small freight brokerage in the Midwest with a dispatcher who was tired of doing everything on paper. He found me because I answered a question he posted about routing inefficiencies. I did not pitch him. I just answered the question with something true and useful. He asked if I had software that could do what I just described. I said I did. He signed a 6-month contract for less money than I had spent on coffee the previous year. I cashed the check and I framed the deposit receipt. Not because the money mattered, because someone paid me for something I built. I did not post about it. I did not call my mother. I put the receipt on my desk and I went back to work. Year 5 came and Caleb's company RouteCore raised a Series B. I saw the headline in my feed before I finished my first cup of coffee. 2 trade publications ran founder profiles. I read both articles. I read every word of both articles. I read the part where Caleb described the origin of the idea. The summer job at a mid-sized shipping company. The gap in the freight carrier market. The 18 months of development. The details were mine. The byline was his. I saved both articles to a folder I had been maintaining since year 1. I called the folder documentation. I did not know what I was documenting for, but I knew I wanted to have it if I ever needed it. Year 6, I hire my first employee. Her name is Priya, and I met her at a conference in Chicago. She was a developer looking for something that was not another food delivery app. I told her about my product and my timeline and my brother. I told her everything on the day I hired her. I told her I could not pay her what she was worth. She said she did not care. That same quarter, I closed 2 mid-size carrier contracts, a produce hauler out of Washington and a building supply company out of Texas. Those 2 contracts brought the company to its first month of profitability. I had 3 employees now in an office above a pizza place and a provisional patent that had turned into a real one. I told no one in my family. My mother still called once a week. She still asked if I had talked to Caleb. I still said not really. She still said she wished we were closer. I still said me too, but I stopped meaning it somewhere in year 4. The articles about RouteCore were indexed and permanent. Caleb's version of the origin story was public record. Anyone with an internet connection could read his account of the summer job and the gap in the market. The summer job he never had. The gap he never found. The 18 months of development he never did. I could have corrected it. I could have called the journalist. I could have sent my folder of documentation. But I did not, because I knew what it would cost me. Not money, time, energy, focus, all the things I needed to keep building. So I let him keep his story, and I kept building mine. I drafted a response to the trade publication on a Sunday afternoon. A letter to the editor laying out my timeline and my documentation. The summer job, the 18 months, the pitch deck, the investor introduction. I wrote 3 versions over 2 weeks. The first version was angry. The second version was legal. The third version was just true. I showed the third version to Priya on a Tuesday morning. She read it carefully, and then she asked me one question. She said, what outcome does sending this produce that is better than the outcome of continuing to build? I sat there with my coffee getting cold. I did not have an answer she would not have immediately challenged. I saved the letter to the same folder as the articles. I did not send it. I made a decision I had been circling for months. I would not spend resources contesting the record publicly. Not money, not time, not emotional energy. I would make the record irrelevant by making my company undeniable. I closed my laptop and I went back to work. Year 7, I closed my first enterprise contract. A regional carrier out of Ohio with a 40-truck fleet. Their dispatchers have been doing everything on spreadsheets and whiteboards. I flew out to meet them in person. I showed them my product and I showed them my roadmap. I did not mention my brother. I did not mention RouteCore. I just showed them what I built. They signed a 12-month contract that was larger than RouteCore's reported revenue in year 2. I looked at that comparison once. I looked at the numbers side by side on my screen. I noted it. Then I closed the file and I moved on. Priya kept a copy of my original documentation in the company's legal files. She did not ask me if she could. She just did it. She told me later that she believed it belonged somewhere permanent. Not for litigation, because I had told her I was not going to litigate, but because someone should know the truth if anyone ever asked. I told her that was fine. I did not look at those files. I did not need to. I had chosen to build instead of fight. But Caleb's public version of the story was still out there. The articles were still indexed. The founder profile was still live. And I had never once corrected it to my own family. My mother still did not know. My father still did not know. My aunts and uncles still read those articles and told me how proud they were of Caleb. I smiled and said he was doing great. I never told them what he took. I never told them how he took it. I never told them that the summer job in those articles was mine, that the gap in the market was mine, that the 18 months of development was me sitting in a 2-bedroom apartment while he watched television on the couch. I never told them any of it, and I did not know if I ever would. The email arrived on a Wednesday morning at 9:14. Not from Caleb, from Rutcor's head of corporate development, a woman named Dana, whose title I had seen on LinkedIn maybe 100 times. The email was formal and courteous and completely vague. It said they were aware of my company's recent growth, and they wanted to request an exploratory conversation about a potential strategic partnership. Caleb's name did not appear anywhere in the email. Not in the sender field, not in the body, not in the signature line. I read it twice, and then I forwarded it to Priya. No comment, just the email. She came into my office 20 minutes later and closed the door. She sat down in the chair across from my desk, and we both looked at my screen. Neither of us spoke for a moment. Then she asked me what I wanted to do. I said I want to know why they are asking. She nodded. I accepted the meeting. Before I confirmed the date, I commissioned a full competitive analysis of Rutcor. Their current product, their market position, their recent churn data, their investor situation. I want to know what they were not saying in that polite, vague email. The analysis came back 3 days later. Rutcor had plateaued. Their core product had not materially advanced in 2 years. The same features, the same interface, the same bugs that customers had been complaining about. Their enterprise clients were my former prospects, companies I had pitched and lost to them in years 4 and 5. And several of those clients had since switched, not to me, to other competitors, but they had left Rutcor. Their churn rate had ticked up 8% year over year. Their lead investor had not participated in the last round. The polite, vague email was not a partnership inquiry. It was a white flag wrapped in corporate language. I closed the analysis and looked at Priya. She was already watching me. She said, "So, they need something." I said, "They need something." She said, "Do you know what you're going to do?" I said, "I'm going to sit in that meeting, and I'm going to find out if Caleb is in the room." She asked what difference that makes. I said, "If he is in the room, then he has to look at me. If he is not in the room, then he is still hiding." She said, "Either way, you have what they want." I did not answer, because I was thinking about the 14 months we did not speak without lawyers in the room. The Christmas dinners where we talked about the weather. The articles I saved to a folder. The letter I never sent. Rutcor was coming to me because they needed something, but I did not know yet what that meeting was going to become. I just knew I was not going to be the one who walked in scared. I'm over at where silence ends. Has anyone else ever gotten a call from someone who took something from you? Caleb is in the room. I see him the second the elevator doors open on the 14th floor. He is seated to the left of Rutcor's head of corporate development. Dana is at the head of the table, and Caleb is next to her like a witness at a deposition. He is introduced as a co-presenter. When I walk in with Priya, Caleb stands and extends his hand across the table. I shake it. His hand is warm and his grip is firm, and we have not been in the same room for 4 years. We have not touched since the Christmas dinner where we talked about the weather. I sit down across from him. Rutcor's team presents for 35 minutes. The pitch is a merger of equals. Shared infrastructure, combined client base, a unified product under a jointly held entity. The slide deck is polished. The fonts match and the charts are color-coded, and the financial projections are optimistic. I know they are optimistic because my own analysis does not support them. The revenue growth assumes customers who have already left. The cost synergies assume headcount that has already been cut. I'll let them finish. I'll let Dana say the word partnership 14 times. I'll let her talk about the exciting opportunity to bring two market leaders together. I'll wait until she is done. Then I ask 3 questions. I ask, what is Rootcore's current monthly churn rate? Dana answers. The number is higher than their presentation implied. I ask, what is your runway at current burn? Dana answers again. The number is lower than their presentation implied. I ask, what does your largest enterprise client's renewal status look like? Dana says he does not have the renewal data available today. He says he can get it. I say I already have it. I do not show him my copy. Caleb speaks for the first time since the handshake. He says he thinks I know why they are here. He says he hopes we can talk about this as people who understand the space, not just as executives. I look at him across the table. He is 41 years old, and he has a company that is plateauing, and he's sitting in my conference room asking for my help. I say I know the space better than anyone in this room. I say that has been true since I was 24. Caleb does not respond immediately. He looks at me, and I watch him decide something. Then he says, I know. I say, then let us talk about what a real number looks like. I open my own folder. I have prepared terms. Not a merger of equals. An acquisition. My company acquires Routcore. Not the other way around. Not a jointly held entity. My name on the door. The Routcore team did not expect this. Dana is looking at my folder like it might bite him. Caleb is looking at me. I have the leverage, and he knows it. But the question is whether they will accept what I am actually offering. A way out. A check. A story they can tell their investors. Or nothing. I sit there with my folder open, and I wait for someone to speak. Rootcore's team requested 2 weeks to review my proposed terms. I gave him 2 weeks. The terms were clear. My company acquires Rootcore's client base and core IP. Caleb and his team are offered transitional contracts 12 months each. The combined entity operates under my existing brand, my name, my platform. It is not a merger of equals because the companies are not equals. I did not put that line in the document, but everyone in the room knew it. 11 days later, Rootcore's attorney sent a counterproposal. They accepted the acquisition structure. That was the first thing I read, and I sat back in my chair. They had accepted it. Not a merger, an acquisition. They wanted 2 modifications. A higher valuation on Rootcore's client list and a named role for Caleb in a combined entity for a minimum of 18 months. I reviewed it with Priya and our attorney in the conference room where the meeting had happened. The valuation ask was high, but not unreasonable. Their client list had value even with the churn. The named role was different. Caleb wanted his name on something. A title, a division, a corner of the company where he could say he was still in the game. I told our attorney I would table that for a separate conversation. The valuation adjustment I could live with. The named role I needed to talk to Caleb about first. Not through the attorneys. Not through Dana. Not through anyone else. I called Caleb directly. He answered on the 3rd ring, and for a second neither of us said anything. I told him I would agree to the valuation adjustment. I told him I was open to a transitional role discussion. But I told him I wanted to have one conversation with him before the contracts were signed. Not about the deal. He asked what it was about. I told him he already knew. There was a long pause. He said, okay. I said, I will send you a time and a place. He said, okay again. I hung up. Priya was standing in my doorway. She asked if he agreed to meet. I said he did. She asked if I thought he would actually show up. I said I did not know, but I knew I would. I sat at my desk and looked at the folder of documentation I had been keeping since year 1. The articles, the letter I never sent, the date stamps on every version of my prototype. Caleb knew what the conversation was about. He had known for 9 years. He just had never been asked to say it out loud without a lawyer in the room. I did not know what he would say. I did not know if he would tell the truth. I did not know if he was capable of telling the truth at this point. But I was done wondering. I was going to sit across from my brother, and I was going to ask him the question I had been holding since I was 24 years old. And then I was going to sign the papers either way. We met at a coffee shop on a Tuesday morning. Neutral ground, his suggestion, which I noted was the first logistically considerate thing he had done in this entire sequence. He was there when I arrived. He had already ordered black coffee in a ceramic mug and his hands wrapped around it like he was cold. He looked tired in a way that had nothing to do with the time of day. I sat down across from him, and I did not order anything. Caleb spoke first. He said he had thought about what he did for a long time. He said he told himself for years it was not what it was. He said he told himself he developed the idea independently. He said he told himself the market was big enough for both of us. He said he told himself I would be fine because I was always fine. Then he said the article, the founder profile in the trade publication. He said that was the thing he regretted most because he knew every word of it was built on my work. The summer job he never had. The gap in the market he never found. The 18 months of development he never did. He said he let it publish anyway. He sat there with his coffee, and he did not ask for forgiveness. He did not say he was sorry in a way that asked me to make him feel better. He just said he wanted me to know he knew. I sat across from my brother, and I listened. Then I told him about the folder. 9 years of documentation. The original prototype files with date stamps. The emails to Marcus about the investor introduction. The unsent letter to the trade publication. The articles I saved. The timeline I built on my kitchen floor when I was 24 years old. I told him I was not going to use it. I told him I built what I built because of what he did, not in spite of it. I said if you had not taken that meeting, I might have stayed small. I might have been happy with one customer in the Midwest and a framed deposit receipt on my desk. But you took it, and I spent 9 years making sure no one could ever take anything from me again. He looked at me across the table. He said, I know. I said, I am not interested in correcting the record anymore. I said the record corrected itself when your company called mine. He nodded. We sat there for a while without talking. Then I stood up. I said, I will see you at the signing. He said, okay. I walked out of the coffee shop, and I did not look back. The contracts were signed 2 weeks later. RouteCore became part of my company. Caleb took the transitional role, and he stayed for 11 months. Not the full 18. He left quietly, and I did not ask why. The article stayed online. I did not ask for a correction. I did not send the letter. I did not call the journalist. The folder stayed in Priya's files where it had always been. I have not opened it in years. I do not need to. I know what is in there, and I know what I built. Am over at where silence ends. What is the thing you stopped carrying because you finally outgrew needing to prove it?